And then I'll start the one for Facebook. YouTube is on, so now we'll do the Facebook one.
I am going to pour myself a little water. That's
Oh, please, no, go ahead, that's what it's there for. And you know that title, Jocelyn, was set up that way to attract people so they can understand that they're all being a bunch of ASSs. Too, it's not just meant that she was. It's a lot of them to show that they need to fix the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody knows there's a problem, but nobody wants to fix it. I come from a father that was an alcoholic, and because he was an alcoholic, and I see what he did to our family and stuff, I never wanted to do that. I don't
Isn't
even
it
drink
amazing
alcohol.
that there are two paths, right? And
Yeah.
some people choose to not get into it,
Yeah.
and then some people
Same
get
with
right
me.
into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see the devastation it takes on people. I could never do that to my kids. I mean, alcohol is not important. You know, I think compassion and caring and love of raising your kids and family time is more important than drinking. That's why I never sit there and watch football games and drink a beer, because it's meaningless to me. I'm not saying you can't, but there's always that point where you can go to the extreme.
Yeah.
And I'd never want to go that way.
Right.
So I just say, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know there was that feeling of when I was with the state police for years. I worked there for 25 years.
Wow.
I've seen so much with that.
Yeah.
You know, even troopers being on alcohol or drugs.
We'll be hearing your opinions of that a little bit.
Oh God, I could go on all night and all day.
Yeah.
Maybe to talking about that.
Oh God.
You must have a unique.
That's real interesting.
Yeah, it is. All right.
All right.
I brought your business card so I could remember all of the letters that come after your name.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to switch it up on you because that's my old business card. I brought my new business card, but I left it in the car.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to just change one thing. So the LAC turned into the LPC. Because I got my
Okay,
license.
now you should be able to Facebook Live as well.
Okay, then I should be able to get it.
Yes, you should. Then I'll do mic check when Greg's ready.
Hang on.
You got time, Greg. You don't worry about it. I'm just.
This chair is so low.
I think if you put this.
If that doesn't work, just get another chair. The new place, we're gonna get all new
if you pull
chairs.
Up, yeah,
There
there
you
you
go.
go. You can raise it. I'm gonna
Some
raise
people
mine
like it
too.
low, some people like it high.
This chair lasts.
It's on.
You got it? Good.
Okay, let me turn.
I don't see me. I don't see.
I always see it a few seconds behind.
Yeah, I don't know
so
why it takes you.
Your mouth is always like.
You're on YouTube too, so.
Oh, there I am. Okay. There we are.
I don't like if you want to because.
So I gotta turn the volume up.
Justin, make us see if I put you on two. So what I'm gonna do is this, if it works, okay? Okay, does that work for you? Then you could just use that headphones.
These.
And at least we should be able to see you.
Wow, this is such a luxury. We're usually rushing to get into the spot because the show is just.
Well, there was no other show before you.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was worth.
The paranormal people weren't on.
Yeah, they were on. They were actually on extra because I just gave them time. It's like, you know, you might as well take the time. Oh, that's much better. I can see you now. Okay. Very, very good. I'm gonna get some take a shot with you guys.
LC, ADC, LPC, NCC, and CPS. AM and FM.
There you go.
All right.
You got it.
Okay. Let's get this. This is my first time with a studio guest with this new arrangement. The arrangement used to be different. It used to be in a circle.
Is it better this way, you
And
think?
it's better. It's actually better this way because when it was in a circle, you'd sit over there and the camera would see your back for the whole hour. And so, you know, what
Just
was
as long as they
Work
can
in
hear
progress.
point of that?
Sorry.
If you want a minute.
Work in progress.
you. Thank you.
We're gonna get more arms too.
There you go. Squeeze one out of there if you need a pen. Robin, I got pens from Adoption from the Heart today.
Oh,
Is that cute or what?
that's cute.
And you are taking calls, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll take calls tonight if someone's bold enough to
Okay, that's fine.
Call if you dare.
dial in. Absolutely.
Hey, see yourself over there. There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for 2 pages and then we're going to go to the music and give people a chance to hit the share button.
Sounds good.
And I'm going to share this right now. So everybody, we're live in 5 minutes.
Oh, is the air shut off or what? It's gonna get hot in here. Let's see if the air shut off. You guys have to sweat.
That clock looks new.
Oh, it's still running.
Your clock.
The clock in the middle? Yeah,
Is
if
that
you're
always that?
I got the digital one right there. Oh, we've got about 3 viewers already on YouTube. Yeah,
On YouTube?
nice. Can you guys hear one another okay?
talking to the mic?
I can hear you.
Yeah. I'm just not sure if I'm hearing.
I'm
my
not hearing her
headset
either. Can you
or
talk
if
a
it's
little
the
louder?
ambient sound.
Hello.
Yeah, I might be just hearing the ambient sound.
Yeah, try now.
Hello.
There you go. Now you're
I
in my
can
ears.
notice the difference too.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm 11 seconds behind you guys.
Yeah, oh, you just started it.
I just counted it. That's
Yeah.
more than usual.
Now, Greg, that monitor there, in case you see a call that I don't see, in case I'm running back and forth, you'll see a call, just let me know. That's what that's there for you.
Okay. I'm so glad you pointed that out.
No, because if you see a call coming in and I'm over there, I'm not going to see
What would
it.
he see? The call was coming in on the monitor.
Just a
I'll show you. Hold on.
Oh, I can call.
I bet it's just
You
something.
you'll just
Now
see
I
it.
see nothing, so if I
Well,
see
yeah,
something.
you'll see it. Watch. Now this is me, so you know it's me. See,
There you go.
okay?
Oh yeah.
So you'll
Notice
know.
that.
And then you'll also know the number. If you know the person, you'll know the number that's calling. So if it's your guest or something, you'll say, "Oh, that's who it is." Put them on. You know. I don't know the numbers.
I don't know if I can see the numbers from here. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
Well, if you
know.
could just see that
I thought it was
bar
an age thing.
until we get a bigger monitor, that's fine.
Oh yeah, you can differentiate when someone's
That's
calling.
good. That's good.
That's all that matters.
Okay. So while we're waiting to move into the new studio, which is going to be what, 6 months, 7 months,
Could be,
8
depending
months?
on, it's all weather related, because they're planning on March, but there's no way we're gonna be in there in March. Took us almost a year and a half
So there's
before they
still,
knocked the building down.
like, Ruben's still going to be working on this and
Yeah.
making this all it can be.
Yes. The
Where
only
are you
reason
guys
why
moving?
is because of the transition and moving over there.
Mhm.
We can't just stop shows.
Where are you guys moving to?
Right behind the Papa's Tomato Pie.
Oh, okay.
It's in the same parking lot. It's just that it's gonna be in the back there. It's gonna be in a brand new building.
Nice. That's something to look forward to.
It turns out that Papa's Tomato Pies is the center of the universe.
Yeah, there you go.
So, you know, all things, the earth, the sun, and the recording studios
Yeah.
revolve around Papa's Tomato Pies. Who would have
If
known?
I ever call in,
You know,
I guess I should go out.
Yeah.
you wouldn't have guessed. Are you going to call in tonight, Rob?
I'm just trying it right now.
Yeah, you're calling.
It's-
There's a caller there.
Yep.
I can't see what the number is,
That's
but I
right.
see there's a caller.
But our plan is though, my message is to you will be on this tablet, high tech.
There you go.
Al Smith, what's up, folks?
Al! All right. Good man, Al. And a couple of people shared already.
Beautiful.
Really?
Tony Parlante's on.
I'm gonna go now to do it.
2 shares. I'll bet Al and Tony both shared. No, it was me, and I think it was me again. Okay, I got the shares running here.
I sent out.
I'm gonna try to share it here. Must be something new with Facebook. They keep asking me, is this pornographic? Is there something wrong? Or is it like, I don't know what they keep asking. I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, I think
It's something new.
I think we've been found out that we're actually in collusion with the Russians to make what's his name, Murphy, the governor of New Jersey. Facebook found out. Now they're all embarrassed.
How does that impact, maybe we should talk about that. How does it impact something like that with the Council on Alcoholism and Drugs? We should talk about that.
Russian collusion?
No, the new
Murphy
governor and the transition of
That's
the
a
governor.
little bit. That's a little bit tricky because we're not allowed to lobby, so we try to stay out of that as
Right.
much as possible. Generally
Right.
speaking, we can maybe touch on it, but we really try to stay
Oh,
out
I
of
won't then.
yeah,
That's why I'm asking you fair. I didn't know.
yeah,
Just curious.
yeah. I mean, it is interesting though because it looks like we could have a situation where marijuana is legalized.
Right.
Probably more likely than not.
And we all have that. All of us who are 501c3s, right? In that documentation to get that status, you have to agree to never,
Yeah.
like, support a candidate or lobby
Yeah.
for political
We
stuff.
can provide education and information,
Yeah.
you know, to help people make informed choices about policies that they're crafting, but we could never directly say that we are attempting to influence something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Got to be careful if you lose your 501c3. You're dead meat, you know? So we're just not allowed to use it. What it boils down to is using untaxed money, you know, to support a candidate. You can't do that. Of course, somehow or other, you are allowed to use your foundation's money to buy a 12-foot high painting of yourself. That seems to
Have
be
you attempted to do
seems to
No,
be
that's what our
okay.
president told us.
No, I think 5 foot 6 inches is enough for me. If there was 12 feet of me, I'd be like twice as much as anyone needs.
That's really big text.
Oh, I know. I got to work on it.
Okay, I'm just letting you know. It's almost
Sharon Sitkoff is on. Hey,
So
Sharon.
people see it. That's
I
the
don't know
whole
if you
thing.
can hear me or not yet, but I'm glad you're
Should be
there.
able to see it. Everybody should be able
Randy,
to hear it.
Randy's on. Randy, if you're listening, I got to see your show. You have to. I'm in town for another 3 weeks. You got to tell me if you're playing in the next few weeks, and I'll try to come out and see you.
Okay, there you go. Are you guys ready? Because it's 9:45. Ready?
It's time.
Okay, let's do it. 30 seconds, guys and ladies. And music.
And it's 9:45 on Thursday night, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for the 17th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. My name is Greg Rapport. I am the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G and the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. And Doc G is working the big board tonight. We're glad to have you aboard, sir. I'm so grateful to all of our listeners for joining us and encourage you to tell your friends because it's time for me to reveal my ulterior motive. And that is very simply when people to listen to this show, they are sometimes moved to make a positive action that helps a child. So if you're watching on Facebook, please take a second and share this with your friends and tell them to share it with their friends. And it becomes kind of a numbers game where if we reach enough people, somebody out there, no matter where they live, will access an agency in their area and volunteer to do something that helps a child. So if you're out there thinking Age Out Angels is in New Jersey and I'm not, what can I do to help? It's as simple as hitting that share button and you'll be helping a child. My guest tonight is Jocelyn Cooper, Executive Director of the Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction, who will give us some interesting insight into the area of addiction and with a little specific focus on prevention, which is something we're in desperate need of these days. And we'll get started with Jocelyn in just a minute. But first, just a couple of quick announcements. As always, our theme music is courtesy of Kurt Seldenridge, operator of the Cave Rehearsal Recording Space in Pennsylvania. If you have recording or rehearsal needs, you can get in touch with Kurt by emailing to thecave1876@gmail.com. You know, I like to offer a couple of happy thoughts at the beginning of every show, and I'm going to keep this brief because I want to get to our guest. But something that I want to share with you, I've been telling you for about 2 weeks about a transgender youth named Brian who was a heartbeat away from being homeless. And he was stuck in Albany, New York, of all places. One of the things that made that situation a little bit extra dicey was that he's 20 years old and his 21st birthday is just a few months away. And as many of you already know, a lot of programs that help children end when people are 21 years old. They just go away. And so the idea of trying to get him started in a program being about 4 months away from his 21st birthday just didn't make sense. And fortunately, the good people at Covenant House in Newark don't worry about those silly age restrictions. And they took him in, and he believes he can stay there for 1 year. And here's the even good news. It's not just a bed. At Covenant House in Newark, they offer job placement services, and they have relationships with companies like Office Depot and FedEx. And then that gets more interesting because FedEx actually has a reputation for being transgender sensitive. So he's going to try to get in there. Plus, if kids want to go to college, FedEx has a tuition reimbursement package, not to mention a higher hourly wage than a typical entry-level position. So now, at Covenant House, you can stay there for a year, but they're sort of hoping that you won't. They want their youth to move towards independence. So here's what they do, and this is fabulous. If parents could get away with this, it would be brilliant. They take when the adolescent goes to work and they get paid, the pay actually goes to Covenant House. And Covenant House takes 90% of that pay and puts it into an escrow account for the youth. And they give the youth 10%, to spend. I mean, think about it. They don't have like tremendous spending needs. The room and board and to some degree transportation is covered. And this is just an incredible program of money management. Try to do this with your own kids at home and see how much luck you have. They'll run away and go to Covenant House where they'll think it's a good idea. And one of these weeks, I want to get the folks from Covenant House to come on the show and talk about this. So a couple of us visited Brian last Saturday. And what I'm beginning to learn is that youth are frequently about $200 away from being stable. Like the difference from being unstable to stable is a room, a meal, and $200. And so in this case, Brian needed $86 to get some personal items out of Hawk. We gave him $40 for some personal things. $25 is what a winter coat cost us. $16 for a new pair of shoes. And we bought him dinner. So basically this whole thing came to about $185. And what we have is a person who had spent his first night homeless about 3 days earlier, back on his feet with a plan. Are you ready for this? A plan to be independent by April in time for his 21st birthday. And that's what I call a success story that just made us all so very happy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Brian at the end of the show because I was there with a partner and I want to tell you a few of the things that she said. But that'll come very, very later. Listeners are welcome to call in tonight. If you're out there and you have a question for our guest or just anything at all that you'd like to talk about regarding the way we care for children in this world, the number is 609-807-2492. If you are listening via my Facebook page, you can feel free to write questions in the comments field of my Facebook page, and I'll be happy to read them on the air. And finally, we are so grateful to the people here at Hamilton Radio. This is a very community-minded company, and they support a ton of worthy causes. And as you can imagine, everybody and their brother thinks it would be cool to have their own radio show, but they've chosen to support us. And we're very flattered by that and very grateful to them. So if you haven't already, it's time to share with your Facebook friends and ask them to share with their friends. And so what I'd like to do now is get right to our guest. And her name is Jocelyn Cooper, and she is the Executive Director of the Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. And Jocelyn, welcome to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Hi, thanks for having me.
With a company name like Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction, I can't imagine what you must have seen.
Yeah, it's something different every day. We do a lot of programs there, which I hope to talk about later in the show. But we're very hands-on. We have deep roots in the community, and we really have a group of people that work for us that really love what they do.
And this is something that we're told that right now in this country, this is becoming a burgeoning problem, especially the drug addiction part. So are you seeing a real sort of swelling in the need for the kind of services that your company
Yeah, I think
offers?
so, but I think we've also been in a space where there's been a need for a while. It is increasing, but we've kind of been in this space for a long time now where there is a large need and we're working very hard to fill it, but there's still more need. It seems like we're sometimes turning our wheels because there's not enough of us.
I was wondering if we were just overstating it just a little bit because, I had heard about drug addiction 40 years ago. It's not like it just got invented yesterday.
No, it didn't get invented yesterday, but we're living in a time where everyone pretty much knows someone or has been affected by someone who has had a drug or alcohol related problem.
So it is spreading out into a wider socioeconomic.
Yeah, I mean, we're really at a place today where addiction does not discriminate. People are coming from all walks of life that are affected, low SES, high SES, socioeconomic status.
Mm-hmm.
It really is not discriminating today.
Yeah. Gene, if you would give us a little bit of the music so that the people will have a chance to share this on Facebook.
Sure.
I'd appreciate it very much. And as you can see, this is going to be an interesting discussion with Jocelyn Cooper. So share this with your friends, and we'll be back in 40 seconds. Okay. Yeah, don't worry so much about them. And we're back with Jocelyn Cooper, and I noticed that Sandy joined and Rob joined the show. We thank you all so much for listening. Al, Randy, Sharon, you guys are out there. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send those to us by way of Facebook, and I'll be happy to read them on the air. Before we continue with Jocelyn, I just want to take 1 second and thank Krupa Dubai at Bristol Myers Squibb, who invited us to present to a group of people today. It was a group of people who were started out thinking about foster to adopt, but Krupa thought that informing those folks about Age Out Angels and the mentoring program might be good for them to consider mentoring as an option. So we spent about 2 hours with some great folks at Bristol Myers Squibb today. Met some really nice people. I want to say thanks to Trella for helping me out with Age Out Angels, and it was excellent to see our friends from CASA were there, and my dear friend Roberta from Adoptions from the Heart was there. And of course, you all know that this is National Adoption Month, so that's always a happy time. So Jocelyn, you have so many acronyms after your name.
Alphabet soup.
You have what? How many degrees do you have? Like 30 or so?
No, I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, a national certified counselor, and a certified prevention specialist.
Wow. And these are all like certifications that you got sort of in addition to your undergrad degree and your master's degree?
Yeah, so my undergrad degree is in psychology. My master's is in clinical mental health counseling and addiction counseling. So that's kind of how I got to that place. But you work on portions of your licenses while you're in school, and then you require getting a lot of hours after school is over. So it takes a pretty long time.
So well, let's learn a little bit more about you professionally. Because you're young and you've really achieved a lot in a brief period of time, and it's pretty impressive. So I guess the thing that makes me curious is when you decided that you were going to get into psychology, is it because of something that happened in your life, or were you always fascinated by it?
Yeah, so I was actually always a pretty sensitive kid. I feel like I always had this empathy for others, and I was kind of really hyper focused on that. And then that kind of just took me up through school. I was in an AP psychology class, which really got me fascinated. But combine that with, we had some addiction issues in our high school. I went to Cherokee High School, which is in Marlton, New Jersey. Upper middle class school, but severe drug problem. And so we still have people from that school today who are struggling. My peers, I see them out and about, and it's a reality. And so by the time I got to college, I knew that I wanted to go into the field of psychology, mental health. And so I got started that way. And then my first internship that I ever did was actually in an inpatient rehabilitation center for teens and adolescents. So that's kind of what sparked my interest in addiction.
Yeah. Well, there was that old joke that they used to make that if you didn't like the public school, you could always send your kid to a private school because the drugs are so much better there. And clearly that's not a joke. No. That's obviously the case. So you graduated college and you started interning at different places while you were working on your master's degree.
So I actually did my first internship in undergrad. So I was working on my undergraduate degree while I was interning, and that was Daytop in Mendham, New Jersey.
So Daytop, that interests me because that works specifically with youth and adolescents.
Absolutely.
Right?
And actually in the state of New Jersey now, Daytop is the inpatient rehabilitation center for teens. I'm not sure that there are any others. If there are, there may be one other, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
What kind of people did you meet at Daytops?
Yeah, so at that, things have changed a little bit there. I know they take older, like older teens, so they work with younger adults too. I think they may be up to 21 now, but I believe when I was there, 19 was definitely pushing the max. So it was about 12 to 18. And I believe it was a little while ago, but there were about maybe 40 to 50 youth while I was there. And they did various counseling services, individual group counseling.
They were living there.
Mhm.
There was
Yeah.
inpatient.
Where I was
Yeah.
inpatient. They do have some outpatient
Outpatient as
programs.
well.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
what did you have to do to get into Daytop? I mean, what?
Yeah, so I
Right.
just applied to be an intern there, and I got the internship, and I did various responsibilities. So I wasn't working on a clinical degree at that time, so there were limited things that I could actually do, but I could do a lot with supervision. So I facilitated some group counseling sessions. We did a lot of activities there. That was really a great program and a really great experience.
And what did the kids do to get in there? How did?
Yeah, so referrals came from different places. Sometimes they came from probation. Sometimes they were self-referral from their families. Their parents wanted them to come there. Sometimes they were caught at school using substances or failed a drug screen, so the school would refer them. Sometimes they would come from other treatment centers that were not at that level. So they were at a lower level of care, such as like outpatient or intensive outpatient.
Just let me interrupt you because you just said something that struck me. How does a child fail a drug screen? Like, how do they end up getting drug screened?
So a lot of the
They were
schools,
adjudicated, maybe?
well, a lot of the schools do like reasonable suspicion. So if
Really? I did not know that.
yeah,
I
well,
mean,
and actually, some of the schools drug test all of the students who participate in after school
Sports.
activities or sports. Um, yeah, so there are ways, and now more and more schools are actually
Are actually
instituting
drug
that as regular practice. Yeah.
tested. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if kids are involved with probation, they're probably getting
Right.
regular urine drug screens, especially if it has been related to drugs or alcohol, the reason why they're on probation.
In the first place, yes. So, well, did you notice a difference between kids who had come to Daytops from the juvenile justice system compared to ones whose maybe families just checked them in? Was there
Yeah,
You know,
there's always
were there
different.
bad kids? Is there such a thing as a bad kid?
I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think
No,
so
I
either.
don't
But
think so.
what did you experience when you were there?
Yeah, so the kids there came from all walks of life. So we had some kids from upper middle class families, lived in really wealthy areas, a lot of opportunity, a lot of resources, and then we also worked with kids who struggled on a daily basis, just worrying about basic. Basic securities such as is there going to be food on the table?
Yeah.
Is it going to be safe for me to walk to school? When is my next meal coming? Things like that. Supporting their families. And so, in those situations, I think it was a lot of adapting to basically survive in their environment.
And when did you realize that there's this sort of this co-occurrence between substance abuse and mental health disorders?
Yeah, so at Daytop, something I found very quickly was that a lot of the kids had trauma, some kind of trauma experience in their life, sexual assault, sexual abuse, physical abuse, a parent who was not there, violence in the community, things of that nature.
I see Daisy joined us. Arthur joined us. A lot of folks are listening right now.
That's
Glad to have you all aboard.
Awesome.
If you just joined us, I'm with Jocelyn Cooper. She is the executive director of the Mercer Council. We just call it Mercer Council.
It's the longest name in the history. Mercer Council is just fine.
Rob says he loves the show. Thank you, Rob. We
Hi, Rob.
appreciate that. Michael Rain is out there. Mary is out there listening. William, thanks for listening. And Rob.
Hi, William.
Yeah, we appreciate your time, guys.
Great.
So what comes first, the chicken or the egg here? We have this conversation all the time,
Yeah.
right? Is it the mental illness that comes first and causes the addiction, or does the addiction come first and cause the mental illness?
Yeah, we see a lot of patterns, with addiction and mental health challenges, but I think this is a phenomenon that is very individual. So it could be one or the other depending on a case by case basis. But you have a lot of youth that are self-medicating, so they're using to cope with something that's going on. Some common ones: anxiety, depression, or some other mood-related challenges. Or you have somebody who begins using, and because of the chemical changes in their brain, it develops a chemical imbalance and therefore puts them, maybe at risk for developing depression or anxiety or something like that. So it's hard to say in general, but it's more determined kind of on a case by case basis. We know, that it's like a nature versus nurture thing. So there are some biological components, but then there are also some environmental components as well.
And with your experience, like how much of mental disorders are hereditary?
Yeah, so their studies show that, for example, depression is something that could have a biological component. Different disorders, definitely there is a hereditary component with those, and the same with addiction. There are studies that show that some forms of addiction are biological.
So but we can safely assume that no matter which one came first, if you are suffering from mental challenges, drug abuse doesn't make that better in the long run.
Right. And so it's sometimes a quick fix that gets, so some people use drugs to change the current state that they're in. So I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. I want to feel different. So I'm going to use this, and that's going to kind of get me out of the way that I'm feeling right now. But then again, when that wears off, the problem or, whatever is going on is still there.
That still has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just let me change the subject for 1 second, because I think one of the funnest things about doing this show on Facebook is that every week I get a new friend.
Nice. I just saw that. That's awesome.
So did you see that?
Yeah. New friends are awesome.
That's wonderful. We thank you so much. And I hope you listen to the show every week. My buddy Jay is out there listening. Jay, it's good to have you aboard tonight. I'm with Jocelyn Cooper, who knows a lot of neat stuff. I think one of the things that you said to me once before that I'll repeat to the audience is that one of the main differences between working with youth and older people is that they're just young, and you have a lot of hope.
Yeah, and a lot of them, are some of them have been at it for a while, but a lot of them are kind of just starting out, and so there's a lot that you can do and put in place to hopefully prevent it from kind of spiraling in a different direction. So you can create new pathways so that hopefully they can avoid the devastation that happens, later down the line.
Well, because there's a point, right, where the addiction does take over. It is physical.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's chemical.
Tolerance, dependence, absolutely.
I mean, there is such a thing as a psychological addiction, but the fact is, if people are buying heroin on the street because it's cheaper than Oxy,
much cheaper,
right? Then that's a serious physical addiction there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for example, with opioids, people eventually stop using to get high, and they use to avoid getting sick. And so that's dependence and tolerance.
Yeah, that's when a drug is totally misused, right? I mean, the conventional drug is you get sick, you take the drug, you get better, you stop taking the drug.
Yeah.
This is a drug where you take it, and then if you don't take it, you get sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you sort of have to take it more.
Or you're going to go through a pretty brutal withdrawal in the case of opiates, for example. Yeah.
So do you know, like, when was Narcan and those other sort of things, when did they come upon the scene?
Yeah, so Narcan has been around for a while, but Christie started promoting Narcan a lot with the Good Samaritan Act, or the Opioid Overdose Prevention Act. And so that was that if somebody was in trouble, like somebody had overdosed, if somebody called 911, they would avoid criminal charges based on having paraphernalia or, having drugs on them. And so it was trying to encourage people to call 911 to save a life and avoid punishment. And so Narcan really started being used heavily because when people would call 911 when somebody overdosed, they would need to reverse them. So Narcan is the opioid antidote. So it snaps someone, it takes them immediately out of the overdose.
And it's essentially a nasal.
Well, there are injectables
Administration.
as well, but yeah, the common one now is the nasal Narcan.
So can't we all walk around with a
We can.
thing of Narcan? Just what's the difference between that and an EpiPen, for example?
Yeah, so actually, if you believe that someone has overdosed and you administer Narcan and they didn't really overdose, it's not going to negatively impact them. It's not going to hurt them in any way to have the Narcan. It's not right. And so you could get trained to administer Narcan. I've been trained. A lot of the trainings out there actually give you a kit that you can carry with you in case you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to use it. The Overdose Prevention Agency Corporation, TOPAC, which is in Hamilton, Paul Ressler heads that up. He does a training for Narcan. And then JSAS actually has the OOP grant. We have the ORP grant, but OOP is Opioid Overdose Program, and they do Narcan trainings. But I would highly encourage people to go out and get trained because you may potentially save a life, especially when overdose is happening so frequently.
Yeah, and in all different, again, socioeconomic groups.
Absolutely.
You don't know where you could encounter that sort of thing. But I think we should also make people aware that there is a possible negative consequence when you save a person's life, right? They may not automatically love you.
They may not. And we actually at the Mercer Council have a program called the Opioid Overdose Recovery Program. And that program is an initiative of the Division of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And so what we do is we have recovery specialists who are individuals themselves in recovery who are able to respond to hospital emergency departments when someone's been brought in with a Narcan reversal. And so the purpose of that is to do a bedside intervention with the individual and try to bring them into our program so that we can provide intense case management and link them to various services, not only clinical services such as detox and treatment, but do they need housing? Do they need help finding a job? Do they need somewhere to get their next meal? And so we provide those services, but when you're being reversed with Narcan, you're placed into immediate withdrawal.
Yeah.
And so you took away my high and now I don't feel good. So you're not my favorite person right now.
Yeah, I mean they can come out of that pretty agitated.
Yeah, but I would say, we have really great recovery specialists. We really care a lot about these folks that we're going into the hospital and working with. And I think a lot of times because the patient has been able to consent to receiving our services, they feel included in the process and, they feel like, okay, I could have said no. So honestly, we really don't really get that pushback as much. We do have a very high success rate of people who engage with our program.
Plus, like you guys are trained professionals, you'll know if you get that pushback, you'll know how to react. I'm just thinking about the people who are listening to the show right now who are going to run out tomorrow and get a Narcan kit and walk around looking to save a life.
Yeah.
And you don't realize always what you're getting into when you do something that good.
Yeah.
Nobody wakes up from that and says, "Oh, thank you so much for saving me."
But you know what? We're finding that sometimes 2-3 months later, we're getting the calls saying, "Thank you so much. I got into treatment. I'm doing really well. I have a job. I'm interacting with my family again. I'm taking steps to get my child back." And so, it may not happen right away, but
well, you just said a host of things
yeah,
that go wrong, that downward spiral.
Yeah.
When you're in the throes of drug addiction and also possibly mental health issues at the same time, right? What are the things that make for a stable life and home life? Is that job, right? That job that produces income, and that goes away, right? Frequently marriages will, break apart over something like that. So now, what happens to the kids, in that kind of a situation? So you see this, it's not like a drug addiction that exists in a vacuum, right?
No.
You're talking about a whole host of life-related
Yeah, absolutely. And by the time we're meeting with these folks in the hospital, so many things have happened. And so, you know, the great news is that our program is there to assist them because before the opioid overdose recovery program, a lot of people who did survive an overdose were stabilized in the emergency department and then released. That's the purpose of the
Yeah,
emergency
right.
department.
And released.
Right.
So
And so,
released into the hands of whoever they bought drugs from the last time, essentially.
yeah, and that time is a particularly vulnerable time for somebody
Yeah.
to go out and use again because they're at the point where they're feeling sick. And
Yeah.
so without any supports under them, navigating the treatment system
Oh,
is
please.
already hard enough.
Yeah.
But when you're a little bit foggy, when you're not feeling good, you may be a little bit agitated, it's nearly impossible. So
Donna asks a very interesting question here.
hi, Donna.
And Donna, we could do a whole show on this. Donna says, how come we're saving drug addicts but can't save cancer patients? Donna, you're killing me. You're just killing me because some things are not arguable, and that's one of them. And you want to split the hair further, Donna? I wonder why we don't spend nearly as much money on a couple of specific kinds of cancer. Like, for example, you want to talk about pancreatic cancer, for which, as far as I know, there isn't even a diagnostic. There's diagnostics for other forms of cancer, like nobody should really die from colon cancer nowadays. You get a colonoscopy frequently enough, you can find out if you have issues. But people get pancreatic cancer. Steve Jobs comes to mind.
And I do want to just address that for a second because just like there are not necessarily cures for a lot of kinds of cancer, there is also not a cure for addiction either. So although we're saving someone's life who has experienced overdose with Narcan, that is not curing their addiction. They still have a long road ahead of them, and part of that is having the support to kind of facilitate them to go in the right direction. But it also requires them to act on their behalf as well. And so, by no means is Narcan like a cure. Yeah, a cure
right.
for their addiction.
And you
so,
just kept them from dying on that day.
on that day,
particular day. And Donna, just like people who do have terminal illnesses, drug addicts have families. They have children. They have a whole world that would be affected by their death.
And think about it, cancer can go into remission and cancer can also come back. And just like that happens with cancer, relapse is part of the addiction process. And so, you may have somebody that relapses multiple times, goes to multiple different treatment centers before anything sticks. So it is very similar in that way. We recognize addiction in a lot of ways as a disease.
But Donna, you are so right. It's a very important point.
I wish we could cure both.
And well, maybe someday we
Yeah.
will. Let's ride that happy thought into a short break and give you all out there a chance to share this with your friends on Facebook, please, and tell your friends to share it with their friends. And we'll help a child before this evening's over. See you in 40 seconds.
I'm playing now, stupid. Sorry. I'm playing. I had to start it over again. Sorry. It's not me. It's stupid.
No, it's a mistake in the mix. That chord was there so that everyone would know when to come in. Say again? Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, we talked about the family in the narrow. Good, we're having fun here, right? Having a good time.
We didn't stick to it too well, but that's no matter much.
Close.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It really.
Feeling good. We're going to talk about, you said you brought some statistics with you, right? So we're going to go into that. And also, that you made a good point here, Rob. We should remember before we come out of break to tell people to call 911. And we're back with Jocelyn Cooper. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. One thing that I did want to point out from the discussion from the previous segment is that if you should administer Narcan, the next thing you do is call 911.
Absolutely. And so I would really encourage folks to go out and take the Narcan training, because this is all of the information that they will give you. I am not a Narcan trainer. I know how to use Narcan, but that's part of the process that they would tell you, to call 911, administer rescue breathing if the person, is not breathing on their own, and things like that. They want to make sure that they get to a hospital to check them out. And call 911, because if you are in a situation where somebody has overdosed, there are certain protections that would kind of shield you from getting in trouble for those drug-related incidences.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to give a big thanks to the people and organizations who donated to Age Out Angels in the past week. We want to send a big thank you out there to Faye and Stella for their donations. And my old buddy Skip sent us a very, very generous donation. We appreciate it. You're all wonderful, and we thank you. And while we're on the subject of giving, did you know you can make a donation to Age Out Angels every time you purchase something from Amazon, and it won't cost you a dime? When you go to Amazon, there's a pop-up that offers you a chance to go to Amazon Smile. Well, if you make your purchase through Amazon Smile, you can designate Age Out Angels as your donation organization. And without it costing you any more, a portion of your purchase will go to help children who need it the most. So there's a happy thought. Remember, Amazon Smile, Age Out Angels. Please do it for the children. So Jocelyn, let's talk in some real numbers, some real statistics here. What numbers do you use to define the issues that we're talking about and your potential target audience and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I recently did a professional development training for one of the Mercer County school districts. And so we focused a lot on the youth. And so just some statistics that by the time they're seniors, 70% will have tried alcohol, 50% will have taken an illegal drug. 50% will have taken an illegal drug, 40 will have tried smoking cigarettes, and over 20% will have used a prescription drug for a non-medical purpose. So those are some of the statistics affecting our youth today. And I know you guys work a lot with youth who are about to age out. And so that's one thing, that you have to consider with some of the youth.
Actually, what worries me more? I mean, what we're talking about here, you're talking about high school age people, right? And we start at 14. So we go from, 14 to 24. Right. And something our mentors have to be prepared for is Absolutely. That when you take a child on when they're 14 years old, they could be a very different person when they're 17.
Yeah, and by the time somebody is 14, prevention efforts are kind of a little bit too late. It needs to start much younger, before their attitudes about substances are formed and before they're formed by the wrong messages. So their peers, the internet, where you can find non-factual, non-scientific information. There are actually a lot of pro-drug sites that will advocate for different ways to use drugs and, will say that it's safe or safer than something else. And so we have to be careful where kids are getting their information from. And so if we can target our prevention to younger audiences, we have programs that start in kindergarten. We're helping them shape their ideas about substances. And, we can be confident that the information that we're providing them is evidence-based, accurate, sends the right message, and things
I think
like that.
Part of this was the incredible lie that they told the doctors back, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago or so, when what was it? It was the extended release version of Oxy.
Yeah.
Right?
So Bayer was marketing heroin at one point, and then Oxy was actually created as a less addictive version of heroin, and that kind of backfired a little bit.
Yeah, well, what the less addictive version of heroin? That's almost an oxymoron. That's why they call it Oxy.
There you go. And we actually know that 80% of heroin users report having first misused prescription medication.
80%.
80%. 80% of those who go on to use heroin reported starting with prescription drugs.
How about that? Well, yes. So the point was the Oxy that they made that was the extended release version, right? So that it would last like 12 hours or something like that. So if a person took it normally, it would give them pain release over a period of 12 hours. But the people who were misusing it took those pills, crushed them,
Yeah.
right? And then either snorted them or injected them and got the full-on effect of that whole thing. And we're probably at risk of overdose right at that moment.
Right. So
You know,
yeah,
right
when
from the extended release,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, version
Absolutely.
of that pill. So that sort of became scary. And just the point that I'm harping on right now is the way they basically factually lied to the doctors.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
doctors get blamed. They pick up a lot of heat for this, but they were
doctors do
lied to.
get blamed, but prescribing was incentivized. So that's one thing. And then
Right.
a lot of doctors were actually evaluated on how effectively they managed patients' pain. So that was told to them that that was supposed to be an important focus. And so they wanted to get good ratings. They wanted to have good feedback. So they had to treat pain.
Right.
So we do have some prescribing issues now in this country. Christie actually just passed legislation in this year that states that first-time prescriptions would be only a 5-day supply, and so we're starting to do more about that. We have a prescription drug monitoring program in New Jersey where doctors have to enter in what they've prescribed somebody, and so that's good as well. But we have folks that keep medications in their medicine cabinets, don't dispose of unused. There were points, I know when I was 15 and I had my wisdom teeth out, I'm pretty sure I got 60 Oxycontin. I was 15 years old and I had to take Motrin, I think, for like 1 or 2 days. But then, if somebody is keeping that medication in their medicine cabinet, that's 60 pills that are sitting around waiting for somebody to take those.
Misuse them.
Yeah, to misuse those. And so, one of the things that we do at the Mercer Council is we really promote the drop boxes. All of the municipalities in Mercer County have a prescription drug drop box. A lot of them are located at the local police departments. And so we encourage people to take their medications and dispose safely of them. We know we shouldn't flush them, or throw them in the trash, but
I'm not sure when it was, but there was at some point when the question of pain became a question in a physical exam.
Yeah, they had the
and
smiley
it was a number.
faces. Yeah, and they had the smiley faces with the numbers, like rate your pain.
Right.
Rate your pain, yeah.
And so that wasn't always a part of every diagnostic, and then one year suddenly it was. Yeah. I think the doctors get a hard rap. I know a lot of doctors, and I don't know a single one who's out there trying to create a drug addict. I certainly don't.
Right, and so that's certainly not the only problem that we have. That's one piece of the problem. You know what I mean? But they're certainly not the only ones that take the blame.
Hey, Jay sent us some nice, kind comments on Facebook. Thanks a lot, Jay. We appreciate it. And believe it or not, tonight we have 2 Donnas listening.
Donna 1 and Donna
tonight. 2. 2 Donnas listening to our show tonight. Okay, so yeah, we want to get onto the subject of prevention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's worth so much more than having to deal with the problem, afterwards.
Yeah.
So you actually came to the Mercer Council about 4 years ago, right?
But the agency has actually been in the community. We're coming up on our 40th anniversary next year.
But your focus, did your focus shift to prevention when you came to the council? I mean,
when I came to the council,
yeah.
So personally and professionally, my focus shifted towards prevention. I still do a lot of clinical work at the agency because we have an employee assistance program. So we do brief, short-term, confidential counseling services.
Is that the WISE program?
No, that's actually our employee assistance counseling program. So where employers can refer or clients can self-refer to receive confidential counseling services. But the agency started out as a prevention agency. Kay McGrath founded the program in '78, and she was with the council for about 20 years. And it was told to me that she started the council as a support group, but then really found at the foundational level, the council has done prevention for the last 40 years.
Absolutely. And Randy, I want to thank you for sharing this broadcast. I just got a notice that you're sharing this. And Randy, you have to send me a note on Facebook and tell me where you're doing your show, because Randy has a one-woman show which is right up our alley here.
Awesome.
Randy, I believe it's called Sometimes I'm Okay. Is
Very
that
cool.
the name of your
I
show?
like
And
that.
you
I'll
have to
have to
tell
check
me.
that out.
You have to tell me when that is. Send me a note in the comments field on Facebook, and I'll tell our listeners where they can catch your show. All right. So we were talking about prevention.
Yeah, prevention is key.
And now you're developing programs to promote prevention in young people.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily develop all of our programs. So we use evidence-based programs, which means that they've been studied and evaluated through research and replicated multiple times to make sure that they are actually reducing, substance
But
use.
how does a young person end up with a drug problem? I mean, so 50% have tried, have sampled, or something like that.
Yeah.
But how does a young person end up with an addiction?
Yeah. So we know that the teen brain is not developed until 25 plus 25, 30. And so teen brains are wired for addiction, basically. They engage in risk-taking behaviors, which makes them more susceptible to try things that aren't necessarily safe for them. But teens, may use to fit in, to feel good, to feel better, to kind of change the situation that's going on, in their mind, how they're feeling. And so those are some ways, but we also have to think about accessibility too, in the home,
Do they still have those parties where they just get a bunch of pills from their parents' house? And
unfortunately,
that still goes on.
Yeah.
Goodness, because I mean, that's been going on now for about maybe 10, 15 years. I would hope
Yeah.
that it had run its course.
You would have hoped.
But the
Yeah.
drugs may be getting better.
Yeah,
right?
and that's really scary too, because they might not even always necessarily be abusable substances that are going into those, pill bowls where they're taking handfuls of. It could be blood pressure medication, it could be medication that diabetics use, and so you're mixing those medications that you don't know what they are.
Right, and that could have adverse interactions.
Absolutely, yeah, and you don't know, who they've been dosed for.
Sure. Plus, so that's where the risk behavior
Yeah, absolutely.
part comes in.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So now you're trying to create educational programming to help with prevention for young people, and young people aren't that good at listening, shall we say? So you can't preach.
No, you can't
Right.
preach, but young people are good at a lot of things. And I think, when you have trained facilitators that can go in and be engaging, we know that scare tactics are not effective with youth. They're just not. We know that just say no is not effective. We need to actually go in and help to build the skills that are going to make the difference. And so we try to incorporate a lot of fun activities. We try to give incentives. We have contests. Some of you guys may have seen our either Prevention Coalition or Mercer Council brochures, billboards throughout the county that we have. And sometimes, we have students who do competitions to get their artwork on a billboard for creating an anti-drug or anti-violence message. We have calendar competitions. We've had other National Drug Fact Week competitions, but we really try to show up to a lot of community events and engage in the fun things too, while bringing our message.
So you walk into a classroom basically, okay?
Yeah.
And how many people are in that classroom? 20, 25 people? Something
Yeah,
like
about.
that? And how old are they? What's a good age?
So
to
we really have a range. We go from kindergarten all the way up through high school.
All right, so let's say you've just walked into a kindergarten or a first grade classroom. What do you do? How do you get their attention and make them want to hear your message? I mean,
some of the programs
first grade, they don't know.
Oh, but those programs are so much fun and so cool. So, for example, we have a second and third grade program called Footprints for Life. We use puppets. The kids see you and they're like, "Hey, puppet lady!" They're just so happy to see you. And those messages are not necessarily totally about drugs and alcohol. They are more about building skills that are going to promote resilience, teaching kids how to have coping skills, have decision-making skills, problem solving, conflict resolution. And so those are the skills that we focus on. There's something called the 40 developmental assets. And so we try to bolster those developmental assets so that people can later have the skills that they need to cope with things and later avoid drug use.
Let's talk about what those 40 developmental assets are, okay? Right after we take a short break and give our listeners one more chance to share us on Facebook, okay? We'll see you in 40 seconds. Thanks. Excellent. We're about 4 minutes behind.
Donna wants
schedule.
Jocelyn for the Elks
I saw that. Awesome.
Drug awareness.
Donna wants Jocelyn for what? Oh, I see it. The Elks Walk Out on Drugs and Drug Awareness Program. Oh, I think you got a fan.
Hey, that's great. I love it.
That's wonderful.
And Randy, December 9th.
Okay, let's pretty well.
Ready?
Yeah.
There you go.
And we're back, and Jocelyn just got an invitation. You know, a lot of Elks listen to this program, right? We have this discussion every week. And Jocelyn got an invitation, says we need Jocelyn for the Elks Walk Out on Drugs and Drug Awareness Program.
I would love to join you.
So we're going to have to hook you guys up. That's one of the Donnas. One of
Is
the
it Donna
Donnas
1 or
is out
Donna
there.
2?
It's I
There
can't
you go.
give them an order.
No, I'm
order
just
of
I'm just
ascension.
teasing you.
I just
No,
can't
but
do
I would
that.
love that. That's
They're
wonderful.
separate but equal Donnas.
Of course. Of course.
Goodness gracious. And while we're talking about the Elks, I have to remind everyone out there that the Princeton Elks Charitable Trust provides funds for worthy individuals, organizations, and veterans. You could even tap this for a little bit of money if you have like something specific, a couple $100 that you need to do something here and there. You can certainly go to the Princeton Elks Charitable Trust. That's what they're there for. And you can do that by calling the president of the trust, and his name is Stuart Malakov, and his phone number is 609-933-7085. And if you couldn't write that down as fast as I could speak it, you can certainly hit me up on Facebook or send me a message at greg@ageoutangels.org. And I'd be happy to hook you up with Stuart at the Princeton Charitable Trust. Princeton Elks Charitable Trust, 609-933-7085. You said 40
Developmental assets. Yeah.
developmental assets. Can you rattle a few of them off?
Yeah, so it
Listen.
would be like coping skills, resilience, decision making, some anger management, learning how to effectively manage and regulate anger. It's a lot about self-regulation and bolstering some of the protective factors, that would later prevent substance use. But I think also the way to engage youth is almost this idea of nothing about us without us, right? So they need to feel like they have input and they have a say. These issues are affecting them, and so it's very interactive. We're really engaging them in a way that helps them feel comfortable about sharing some of these issues, and so we actually sometimes have that in some of our classes. Someone's disclosing something or reaching out and asking for help about a specific thing or asking for resources in a certain area. And so, because we have trained facilitators, we have a person who is there with a response that's going to effectively send that message, that's going to be correct.
And if you and I mean the program from a mathematical point of view is just very simply, if you reach enough people, reach enough children, there are a few who you'll be able to keep,
Absolutely.
from doing that, just by the fact that you're there and
Absolutely.
fighting the good fight.
And we know that prevention, kind of has to be the answer, because we're not going to treat our way out of it. There's not enough bed availability. Not enough people have access to these programs. We're not going to arrest our way out of it. That also doesn't work because it doesn't give the help and support. So we know that prevention kind of has to be the driving force behind reducing substance use disorders.
And there are just too many people working against us in this effort, because there's so much money at stake. There's billions of dollars at stake. And I don't care if it's a drug dealer on a street corner or a drug company. They're working 24/7.
Absolutely.
To keep moving product.
Absolutely.
And so, if you can do it from a prevention point of view. Now, so tell me, when people are already adults, can you still do prevention?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was actually hired at the Mercer Council to do the WISE program, which is the Wellness Initiative for Senior Education. And so we know, that older adults have issues sometimes with managing their medications, misusing medications, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And so at that point, a lot of the programming with older adults is raising their awareness of these issues so that they can avoid them, helping them them understand some things associated with aging. So that is a really, really important program that I think older adults loved. But our opioid overdose recovery program, helps adults, and that program is prevention because it's preventing future overdose and hopefully breaking the cycle of addiction, but it also is like borderline intervention as well because you're intervening after, there already is some sort of issue. But we also do a lot of programming for parents. So we try to do a lot of parent programs in the schools where we facilitate the evidence-based prevention programs so that the conversations about prevention and drug use are carrying over at home. We know that that's what makes programs more effective is when school and home are both on
You can
board.
tie them
Yeah,
together.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Now, so if a person is not a child, an
Yeah,
adult,
yeah.
how would they be able to contact your agency if they felt that they
Oh,
had
yeah,
used your
absolutely. So
services?
our website is mercercouncil.org, but they can always contact me. My email address is jcooper@mercercouncil.org. You can find out more information on our website. Our phone number is there. My extension is there. But we really provide so many services in the community. It's hard to talk about them all, in an hour.
Well, I think if this is something that you're interested in, you should go to their website.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
mercercouncil.org.
mercercouncil.org,
Yeah.
and get in touch with Jocelyn and
We'd
and
love
the
to hear
wonderful
from you
people
guys.
that you were. We're so glad you came on the show today.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
before
you very much.
before I forget, Randy Simon Lupo's show "Sometimes I'm Okay" is on December 9th in Freehold at the Center Players. For tickets, you can go to sometimesI'mok.com.
I will definitely be checking that out.
She's a funny lady who isn't afraid to share her issues, with an audience. Just a couple of final thoughts before we end the show tonight. Something came into focus when we were meeting with Brian last weekend. If you recall from the beginning of the show, Brian is a transgender male who we managed to get into Covenant House in Newark and start to help him get his life stable. He's a statistic because, by coming out and addressing his own personal transgender issues, he was no longer welcome in his nice, comfy, middle-class Florida home.
Very brave of Brian.
Which is, well, yeah, I mean, he was pretty much thrust into it, and as happens to so many,
Yeah, absolutely.
of people in that situation, and of course, among homeless youth, the highest suicide rate is among the LGBT
I think that, that speaks to the need for cultural competence training and
Absolutely.
The power of using sensitive language. We've come a long way, but we still have a whole lot to learn.
And I mean, when we think of cultural competence, to include LGBT
Oh, absolutely.
in that grouping
Absolutely.
is like a new thing.
Yeah.
That's a whole new area. So anyway, when I went up to meet with Brian, I brought a lady with me whose name is Jill, and she has experience existing in the transgender community, and has endured some pretty outrageous things herself. And so Jill came with me, actually met me there, because I wanted Brian to have someone who he could automatically relate to, who had been through some of the challenges as he has been through. And many times we hear when we do this kind of work that it's one thing to help people, but people would prefer to be helped by someone who looks like them. So for example, when an African American child is being told why they should go to college, and grow up to become a success, if they're being told that by an African American person, it makes more sense to them because they see that it's attainable, in that way. So anyway, Jill just took that idea and really brought it into focus, because we were talking about what kind of therapist. And she said one of the things that she doesn't want to have to do, like she always tries to, if she needs a therapist, she looks for someone who's LGBT trained. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And why is that? And the reason that she said was she doesn't want to have to begin by educating,
Absolutely.
right, her healthcare practitioner on what he or she should be sensitive to.
And if that's your first
know.
experience with counseling, it's probably not going to give you such a good feel for
Yeah.
how that went.
Yeah, I just thought that was so ridiculously articulate. I'd never heard
Yeah.
it, quite said that way, about how people prefer to be helped by someone who looks like them, whether it's race or age or gender. It's just somehow easier to open up when you think the person understands you right from the get-go.
I think also to the power of shared experience. For example, our recovery specialists going into the hospital, they may not look like the person, race or age-wise, but they have that connection because they've been in the same shoes.
Exactly, and the point that I want to make is I don't think that necessarily makes for a good mentor, and I'll tell you why. Because a good mentor is someone who can look like anything, but can hook you up
Absolutely.
with the right people
Definitely.
who look like you, and that's exactly what I tried to do with Brian.
That's great.
And it really made a difference. Really made a difference. The mentor is the conduit, not the expert on all things. And with that happy note, I want to say a thank you again to Doc G and all the people here at Hamilton Radio. Thanks to my guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
Jocelyn, it's been a real pleasure having you here and the fabulous work that you are doing at the Mercer Council. Join us again, not next week. It's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Until then, let's make the next 2 weeks the best 2 weeks ever. Good night.
Good night.
You're clear.
Yeah, that was great. This girl's co-host is here.
She's awesome. She's awesome.
It's a shame she has such a long commute home.
It's alright. It's quite alright. That was fun.
Awesome job, guys.
Yeah.
Mercer
It's so-
Council. Oh, a comment just came in. Mercer Council does good work. I know people they helped.
Michael Rain, I think.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
Michael.
Michael. Very cool.
You had a lot of new people in there tonight. You had some
Yeah.
independent music artists, or my friends,
Nice.
that have been recovering.
Nice.
So they're even better because they already have a fan base of people.
Yeah.
And some are actually
Oh,
I'm
yeah, you
telling
should
you.
hang with musicians.
good musicians.
comics.
No, really,
Right.
seriously.
What's cooler than the recovery community though? They really are just like they really are. They're so
They've been through
deeply
it, so they
rooted
know,
and
yeah.
they never hesitate to jump in and help. We love we have such a good recovery community in this area. We really do. Are you familiar with City of Angels, Recovery Advocates?
I actually started their radio station.
City of
years ago.
Angels?
Yeah.
You know Allison Sahu?
Yeah, I know Allison.
Yeah.
Allison's a sweetheart of a person,
Yeah.
but she kind of was a downfall for us because she kept setting up shows and I couldn't do them all. So I had to pull out.
Got it.
And then they got rid of it. Actually, they got rid of me because the stadium would be associated with Hamilton Radio. And I was
Got it.
trying to use Hamilton Radio as a forefront to help their cause because all the musicians and friends I have
Right.
that
Yeah.
just didn't work out. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, I started it.
Wow, we
Yeah,
got a
that's
lot of
awesome.
comments
That's
there.
really
A lot of
cool.
people were out there.
I'm friends with
Yeah,
Kevin
one
Muir,
guy
the
that
one that was
Yeah.
Kevin knows me
Right.
really well.
She was
Absolutely.
mad.
We don't work as closely with them, but Allison
That's okay.
Sahu's a member of our
That's
coalition.
what
Yeah.
Allison's a sweetheart.
Yeah,
I love
she's-
Allison.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
talked a lot about stuff.
I'm looking for her thing so I can show it to.
No, it was great.
Donna was mad as hell.
She was mad. Not the one.
Oh, that other Donna.
The other
Yeah.
Donna.
Why was
Yeah.
she mad?
She
She
was
wanted
mad
to talk
because she
about
wanted to
breast
talk
cancer.
about breast cancer.
She kept wanting.
You can't please everybody, but at the same time, you know.
What did she want us to say?
Just see her comment.
I think she just wanted to vent.
She wanted. She.
Yeah,
she
why do the
wanted
funds
her
go
first
to
time
helping recovery addicts when it could go to help
breast
cancer? Yes.
Oh, that's
You know, everybody has a different reason, you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
I can't seem to access her
No, it's
comment right
okay.
now.
And then
I will.
the
I'll
second,
check it out.
no, and the second comment.
Yeah, it'll be on the
sec-
page.
The second comment
Yeah.
was, what was it? It was, that she had breast cancer.
She had breast cancer.
and
Nobody helped her
nobody
financially.
helped her
Her
financially.
marriage fell apart. I mean, she just went on and on and on about.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's not what the show was about. And,
Right,
And the
yeah.
fact is, there's a different
You know,
reason.
and I think sometimes we have this tendency to compare
I was
everything,
gonna
right?
say, it's like a